Hello, everyone, and welcome to Godly Play featuring Amy Crawford. I am Isaac, and I'm going to be your tech host, and it's going to be my job to make sure that this workshop flows smoothly. So be sure to drop me a note in the chat if you have a tech question or any problems as we go along. This workshop is going to be about 50 minutes, but I'll be sure to give you the 5-minute warning, before we end. And this workshop is going to be recorded for replay purposes, for anyone who wishes to go back, watch any section that they missed or anything like that. And at the end, I'm going to ask you to fill out a mini pop-up evaluation, and there will be a handout from Amy herself. And I'm gonna give you the handout. It's just written by Amy. Yeah. With the pop-up evaluation, we'd really appreciate it if you fill it out. Your input is valued around here. Thank you so much. Anyway, it is my great pleasure to introduce Amy Crawford. Welcome to Godly Play.
Thank you, Isaac. And yes, I'm very happy to see you all here. And you'll see that I'm working with two cameras. I will tell the Godly Play story, and when I tell that story, I will turn off this camera that you see my face in right now so that you can focus on the story. I am going to tell the story of the Circle of the Church Year. And I chose this story because of our keynote presentation this morning, which was about making our way through the Circle of the Church Year in worship. So there are 4 types of Godly Play languages. There are sacred stories, and sacred stories focus on the stories of the people of God and their relationship with God. We also have parables, which are the closest that we have to the true way that Jesus spoke. So we have 6 parables that Jesus told, and then we have some parables about parables. And then we have what are called liturgical stories. So the story that I'll tell you today falls into the language of liturgical stories. And these stories help us learn more about the practices of the church and the seasons of the church year. The 4th language of Godly Play is the language of silence. We do practice silence in Godly Play, and you may hear some times of silence as I'm telling this story. Silence is important in our lives and important for us to come close to God. So I'm just going to dive into the story, and after I tell you the story, I will invite you to do some wondering. And I'm hoping that there's a way, Isaac, that we can unmute people so that they can wonder aloud. Not all wondering happens out loud, but it's nice if I can get some verbal responses to the wondering questions. I think I will just dive into the story now, and we can talk about it after our time of wondering. Oh, one other reason that I chose this story, and we'll look at that a little bit after I've told it in this way. This story is also a story that I've told often in a big way in worship. So I thought you might be interested, as folks who lead worship, to know a way that you could incorporate Godly Play storytelling into a worship service. Okay, so I am going to turn off this camera so that we can begin the story. And hopefully you can just focus on that one story. Okay. Well, our story is actually right behind me here on our page. the story of the circle of the church year. Time. Time. There are all sorts of time. There is a time to wake up, a time to go to sleep. There's a time to go to work or to school. There's a time to play. There's a time to go to bed. There's a time to wake up. There's a time for hockey or baseball or swimming. There are all sorts of kinds of time. But what is time? Now, some people say that time is in a line. I wonder what time in a line looks like. Wait a minute. Wonder if this could be the beginning of time in a line. Look, time is just being born. It's so new. But as time in a line continues, the beginning gets older. And this is the new part now. Look, the beginning is getting older and older. And here is the newest part. Now, I wonder if there could be an end to time in a line. Oh, there it is, the ending of time in a line. And yet, this is the newest part. So we have an ending that's like a beginning, and we have a beginning that's like an ending. So do you know what the church did? The church tied together time in a line. Because we know that for every ending, there is a new beginning. And for every beginning, there is an ending. Now here are the three great times. This is Christmas. Here's Easter. And this one, oh, that one is hot. Oh, this is Pentecost. Christmas, Easter, Pentecost. Three great times in our circle of the church year. Now, these times are also great mysteries. And you know, sometimes people can walk right through a mystery and never see it. So we need time to get ready. The time for getting ready for Christmas is called Advent. And it lasts for 1, 2, 3, 4 Sundays. And Christmas isn't just, it's such a great mystery. It isn't just in one Sunday. Christmas goes on for 12 more days until Epiphany. So we celebrate it at least 2 Sundays. Now here is the time for getting ready for the mystery of Easter. It's called Lent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there are more Sundays in Lent, the time for getting ready for the mystery of Easter, than there are getting ready for Christmas. I wonder about that. And Easter is such a great mystery that we can't keep it in one Sunday. And so it goes on for 6 more Sundays. It makes a whole season. And it takes us all the way to Pentecost. Now, here are all of these great green and growing Sundays. One of them let's see if we can put it all together again. And pay attention, because the church tells time not just with numbers, but also with colors. Here are the 3 great times: Christmas, Easter, Pentecost. Christmas goes on for 12 days, all the way to Epiphany. Here's the time for getting ready for Christmas. It's called Advent. And the color for Advent sometimes is a rich royal blue. Sometimes people use purple. Those are serious colors. They're colors for royalty. A king was coming. During Christmas, we celebrate the birth of Jesus. It's such a joyful time. And then here are the times for getting ready for the mystery of Easter. And they celebrate these Sundays with the color purple. A king was coming, but not the kind of king that people thought would come. And Easter, such a great mystery, goes on for 6 more Sundays. Now, Jesus died on the cross, and that was sad, but it was also wonderful in an Easter kind of way. You see, after he died, his friends still were coming to know him and meet him in new ways. One day, they went outside the city of Jesus and they saw him go up. And then a few days later, the Holy Spirit came down. And the disciples were filled with the energy of the Holy Spirit. It was as if their tongues were on fire. They could speak to anyone. They glowed with the power of the Holy Spirit. And that's why we use the color red, as it reminds us of God. Let's put in those green and growing Sundays. Between Christmas and Lent, there can be no more than 9 Sundays. There could be fewer, but there can be no more than 9. So we'll put 9 in here. Then after Pentecost, we have so many green and growing Sundays. Do you know what these Sundays after Pentecost are called? They're called the Sundays after Pentecost. During this time, the days get longer, school finishes, maybe we go to camp, go on holiday with our family and friends, we can play outside longer and longer. And then it's time for school to begin again. So many new things, new teachers, maybe new clothes, new friends. As you go, the days begin to get shorter and shorter. And just about the time when it seems like all of the light is going to go out of our days, we come to Advent again, and we light a candle. Those great green growing Sundays have ended, but we have a new beginning. The church year actually starts with the first Sunday of Advent. Here they are again, this great mystery of Christmas, which goes on for 12 days. Easter, which goes on for 6 more Sundays. I wonder, I could turn on my other camera. Isaac, can you spotlight this other camera? There we go. So I wonder which of these colors you like the best. Feel free to unmute.
Amy, I like purple.
You like purple the best. Color for Lent, sometimes the color for Advent.
Amy, I like blue the best.
You like blue the best. You know, I forgot to say that sometimes in Advent, we actually use a light blue, which is a color for the Mother Mary, because of course there would be no Christmas without the Mother Mary. Blue is a good color. Well, I wonder which of these colors might be most important.
Maybe all of them.
All of them are important. We need all of them, don't we? Yeah.
To make the circle.
Like the circle, we need all of the circle. Gives us everything we need. Well, I wonder where you see these colors in church.
On the communion table?
On the communion table,
On the pulpit.
on the pulpit,
In candles,
sometimes we see these colors in candles.
On clergy.
On clergy, sometimes our minister wears the colors. I wonder where the colors go when we don't see them anymore.
So we're answering as children, right?
No, you answer as yourself.
I'm kind of answering as a child here. They fly up into the rainbow.
Oh, maybe they fly up into the rainbow. Yes, we can see these colors in the rainbow.
They hang out in the banner closet.
Oh, maybe they hang in a closet somewhere. Yes. I wonder who changes the colors. Maybe some of you change the colors.
Someone on the worship team.
Someone on the worship team changes the colors for us. Yes. Well, I wonder if there's any of these seasons that you like best.
I love Advent.
We love the season of Advent. We get ready for the coming of Jesus. Well, I'm sure there's a lot more wondering that we could do. But I think we'll put our story away and we'll stop our wondering for now. The story goes right behind me. Okay, friends, so let's talk a little bit more about godly play and about your experience of the story. And I do have, just for those of you, I do have orange cubes as well, in case some of you celebrate the season of creation. You may want to have orange blocks in your story, depending on what colors you're going to be using in church. So godly play, and I really appreciated a lot of what the speaker had to say this morning about how our stories and our liturgical year can open us to new experiences, how the stories form and shape us, how they become part of our culture and a part of our reality. And interestingly, he talked about 4 stories. And in Godly Play, we have what we call 4 stories. And for the parables, we have the 6 core parables that Jesus told. With the sacred stories, we would have our sacred stories actually begin at the beginning with the story of creation. And we have the story of Noah, of the great family, Sarah and Abraham. We have the story of Noah, the Exodus, the 10 best ways, which is what we call the story of the 10 commandments. We have the story of the ark and the tent, and the ark and the temple. We have stories of exile, the story of the prophets, and we have just a couple of New Testament stories that we consider sacred stories as well, stories about the disciples. So we circle we call Godly Play a spiral curriculum because we go back again and again to the core stories. But we also go deeper. The circle just doesn't stay on the top. Otherwise, it would just be a circle and not a spiral, but it goes deeper. And so underneath, you'll see in the room, we have some stories that are on lower shelves. And those can be stories that extend or enrich our core stories. So in the sacred stories, for example, we have the story of the great family, which talks about Sarah and Abraham's journey from Ur to Hebron and the birth of Isaac and his marriage to Rebekah. But we also have what we call an enrichment story of Abraham. And there we dive with older children in particularly into more of Abraham's life. We hear the story of taking Isaac to the mountaintop and God providing the ram. We also have an enrichment story of Sarah, which tells about her relationship with Hagar and the birth of Ishmael. So we go around and around the core stories, but we also go deeper and deeper into these stories of the church and the people of God. And what we're trying to give children is a religious language, a language that helps them deal with the existential dilemmas of life. The existential limit of aloneness, even in a world full of people, we can feel alone. The existential limit of freedom. Sometimes freedom is too big and we need limits to our freedoms, but there can be joy in freedom. We have the existential dilemma of meaning. How can my life be meaningful? How can I find my place that gives meaning to my life? And finally, the greatest limit of all that we struggle with our whole lives is death. What happens when our life on this earth is over? And children are wrestling with these existential limits and dilemmas their whole lives. And so we give them these stories to help them have a language to speak about and to wrestle with those existential limits. I'll tell you a story. And I guess one thing I'll say, we tell godly play, really we tell godly play to any age of person, and they can be meaningful at any age. But our hope is that as children hear these stories again and again and go deeper into the Christian story and the language of our faith, we hope that when they reach their teenage years or adulthood, they will have a way to make sense of difficult situations. So I'll tell you a story that a friend of mine, another godly play trainer, tells about her son. Her son was in high school, and one day during school hours, a young woman took her life by stepping in front of a train that the track was right behind their high school. The school tried to shield the teens, of course, from what had happened, but they knew, they found out. And so the school allowed the students to go home early. Now, my friend was sick that day, and her son called her and asked her to pick him up, but she was just so sick she couldn't get out of bed. So he found his own way home. And when he came home, he went into her room and told her, about what had happened and, all the feelings that he was experiencing. But she just felt so ill and ill-equipped to help him. So he went into his room, and he was a musician, so he began playing Brahms' Requiem. She could hear that music coming from his room. And he stayed in his room for a long time by himself. The next day, he went to school. She was feeling better. She tried to tidy up around the house, and she looked into her son's room, and she found that besides listening to music, he had been drawing pictures of symbols from godly play, symbols from Christian worship. So she realized that through godly play and through their practice of attending worship, he had everything he needed to help him deal with this very difficult situation that he had encountered. So that's just one story of many stories I've heard where people talk about that godly play, and that the stories help young people make sense of difficult situations. I'll also say one more thing. I don't have much time yet. I want you to have some time for questions. One of the other things we talk about when we talk about the spiral curriculum is that the spiral curriculum is more than the stories. The spiral curriculum also includes our spiraling, our circling around the liturgical seasons every year. And it includes our practice of Christian worship. So three circles sort of help that spiral curriculum to have energy. And in godly play, we fashion our sessions with children around Christian worship. So children are greeted at the door by what we call a door person, who asks them an important question: are you ready? So hopefully they are. Sometimes they're not, and that's okay. They can wait. Then they come and they form a circle with the storyteller on the floor. We have a time of gathering. A lot of times I like to light a candle, sometimes sing, and then we enter into our story and go into our wondering, and then children in godly play have a time of response, and it is an open response. They are not, there's no craft that they're mandated to do. There's no game that they have to play. They choose how they want to respond to the story. We have a lot of art materials. We have blocks that they can build with, or they can work with the stories themselves during their response. And then after response time, we come back to the circle. We have prayers and a feast together. And then after the feast, we have a time of blessing. And we like to do an individual blessing with each child if we can. So the child comes to the storyteller and receives a blessing. And often we try to name something that we saw the child doing. So we try to call out the best in the child. And then they are dismissed, either to return to worship or to return to their families. So we have the spiral of the stories, we have the spiral of the seasons of the church year, and we have the spiral of Christian worship. I'm going to stop there, and maybe even you can take me off the spotlight and we can see the gallery view. Oh, before we do that, sorry, one more thing. I knew I would forget this. I told you earlier that this story that I just did is a story that we've done in worship in a large way. And so I'm going to ask if Isaac, can you show that little video? It's just a short portion of this story told large.
Sure thing. Just let me know. Send me a message if you think the video's too loud or too quiet.
Okay, thank you.
Time, time, time. There are all sorts of time. There's a time to wake up, time to go to sleep. There is a time to go to work or to school. There's a time to play. There's a time to eat. There's time to stop eating. There's a time for hockey. There's time for basketball or baseball or swimming. There are all sorts of time. Now, some people say that time is in a line, a timeline. I wonder what time in a line would look like. Wait a minute. I wonder what this could be. I wonder if this could be the beginning of time in a line. I wonder how long time in a line might be. Look, the beginning is now the old part, and this is the new part. This is the part that's just being born. I wonder how long time in a line could go on. Oh, look, the beginning is getting older. There's still a new part coming. I wonder when it could end. There it is. There's the ending of time in a line. But this ending is the newest part. And the beginning is the oldest part. So, do you know what the church did? The church tied together the new part, that is the ending, and the beginning, that is the oldest part. The church tied them together because we know that for every beginning, there is an ending. But for every ending, there is a new beginning.
Thank you, Isaac. So that's one way to introduce the story, the time in a line. And I've introduced the colors we've done it many times and used 3 different things to help us introduce the colors. We've used helium balloons, which are very fun and very impactful to begin to circle your church with helium balloons in the colors of the church year. We've also used plastic leis, so just had people put leis around their necks, and also done it with paper plates, so colors, and then we just kind of pass out the plates and people hold them up. So just wanted you to see that little clip, and if you are interested, I could always send there. That was done at Islington United Church in Toronto in September. So I could also send you a clip of the full worship service, so you could see how the rest of the colors were unfolded later. Okay, so I think I've said everything I wanted to say. I can go and say many, many more things, but if we could maybe let me see everyone and let me hear your questions. Can we do a gallery view on Spotlight Me? There we go. There we go. So go ahead, Martha.
I was just saying we have a quiet group. I don't know if it's because people are familiar with Godly Play already or not. But I wanted to say how much I appreciated seeing the team that came up to the Yukon to run the Camp Spirit Day Camp.
Ah,
So they use Godly Play during the day with children who I think hadn't experienced it before. But the other, and it was just wonderful to see that in action, and how they made their way through the day in such a calm but energized and fun manner, and the kids just loved it. But I also really appreciate your story about the high school student suicide and this boy's reaction to it, because it just shows how this formation, I mean, through the childhood, through a childhood can really set us up for managing things better, managing challenges better. So thank you.
thank you. Let me ask, have some of you experienced Godly Play? So Martha talked about seeing it done at Camp Spirit. Has anyone else had an experience of Godly Play?
I had experience with Godly Play, not where I am, but I was fortunate enough and privileged enough to be with another Godly Play trainer named Bruce Lamex in Alberta and Wetaskiwin.
Yes, I know Ruth well. Yeah.
And so I've always been in awe about the setting of the room and the way the morning or whatever time unfolds in the Godly Play space. And so I'm in my setting, I'm trying to come to that calm, for one thing, and the wandering questions that engages hopefully everyone in a different way. And the open-endedness of it, I really appreciate. You know, we don't have to have the right answers, and there's no testing. And as a aside, I also really appreciate the quality of the material and the attention to the child's or anybody's well-being that is part of the experience.
Thank you, Barbara. That's a beautiful description. Yeah, we do want children to know that they are valued and that these stories are valued. And so we try to create beautiful spaces and to use beautiful and durable materials.
I guess on that note, Amy, I'd share an experience that I had. I have the gift of working with a wonderful, soon-to-be commissioned diaconal minister. And I had designed the family Christmas service. And she said, "Can we open it up a bit?" And I said, sure, like, what do you have in mind? And we have a nativity set that has very simple characters that are about 18 inches high. And what she did is, rather than have the nativities set up on the front steps of the chancel, she gave them away to kids in the congregation. And we would tell a little bit of scripture, and we would and then she would open it up and invite the child who had whatever character to come forward. And while we were singing, they were placing things. It was the most bizarre looking nativity set by the end of the day, but it was really neat, the kind of buy-in that the kids had. And it was really instructive for me to think that would never have occurred to me. And yet it was the principles of godly play that she was using. And it worked incredibly well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Teresa.
Yeah.
So as you can see, we do in Godly Play, we also learn the stories by heart. And we talk about that a lot when we train people, that it's not about memorizing, it's about holding these in your heart. And that's also a way of showing value to the story and to the child, that we tell the stories by heart. We also, oh, sorry, somebody's outside the room and I got distracted by them. What else was I going to say? I don't know. You tell me what other questions you might have. Oh, one thing that the speaker this morning also said was, he talked about that you can't step into the same river twice, and you don't step into the same story twice. And because you are different each time you hear the story told. So that's also so important in Godly Play, and part of why we tell the stories again and again, because we know that the child will hear them in a different way from year to year. The youngest child, their wondering might be quite concrete, but over time, they also develop a language of wonder, which is such, I feel like such an important thing for us to have in life and in our faith, is the capacity to keep wondering. Any last questions? I know we're almost at the 50-minute mark. So yeah, any last questions?
More a comment than a question. If someone's got a question. But I just feel like this is really important, especially as children get into elementary school and they're pulled into video games and a lot of screen time of various kinds, sometimes even as part of school, to have stories, to embrace that stories without screens can be really great.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually quite powerful. The children can enter the Godly Playroom with all sorts of feelings and all sorts of moods. And, they can be sometimes hard to settle, but once that story starts, they are just so focused.
Yeah.
I think that's something I wanted to say, is that in Godly Play, the focus is not so much on the storyteller as on the story, which is why when I told the story, you didn't really see me. We focus as storytellers on the materials so that the children's focus can be there too. So handout, Isaac, there's a handout that I provided. And if anyone is interested, I know sometimes watching a worship service online is not as engaging, but if anyone is interested in seeing the full service at Islington United and the way that the whole story was incorporated, I'd be happy to send that link as well. So Isaac's put the handout in the chat. You can click on it and download. And thank you so much for your time and for your input and your interest.